Research shows the secret to social connection is vulnerability, but society often views vulnerability as a weakness. So here to explain this, please welcome relationship expert Dr. Karyn Gordon. So happy we're talking about this today, vulnerability. So when you jumped into this, this was even interesting for you, this topic,
Totally.
yes?
You know what? I love doing these segments. I find them so interesting because we'll kind of like take a topic and we'll kind of do a little deep dive on it, and it's amazing with how much information and research is done around topics like this, for sure.
So some people might think of the word vulnerability and think, who cares? Why do we even need to discuss this? Why is it important? It's important for so many reasons.
So many reasons. Harvard Business basically says it is the secret of social connection. Isn't that interesting? The secret.
Yeah.
When we kind of boil it all down, we think as a community, no, it's actually vulnerability. Brene Brown, who I'm a big fan of, who's kind of like the research person on this topic, and she says it really is the secret for meaningful relationships. So,
because if you think about it, how else do you get a proper connection?
Yes.
If you are not being 100% real about what you're thinking, what your passion is, what you're feeling, and who you are. How do you ever get there?
Right.
How do you have a proper relationship? Like, it makes a lot of sense to me.
It makes a lot of sense when we think about it, and yet there's something counterintuitive around, well, vulnerability is a weakness.
Yes.
It really is. Like, it's fun for me to have these segments and then to talk to people in the makeup room and backstage and with colleagues and friends. Like, what do you think about this? And I think a lot of people are like, but it seems like it's weak.
Yes.
Or is there almost too much vulnerability?
Right.
Right? Could we maybe become too vulnerable? So it kind of, just even having the conversation around vulnerability I think is fascinating.
You have a list of the reasons why it's important, and I love this list because it switches the discourse from the weakness and the submissiveness to the power that comes with vulnerability. So it's a sign of courage and of being yourself and being authentic.
It is really, when you really kind of strip it back, I really think it's a sign of courage.
Yeah.
It's a sign of courage around being totally authentic with actually who you are. And I think about even in the last couple of weeks, I don't know, any basketball fans here?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, so kind of. So we're a big basketball fan. And, Jesse, with what's actually happened in the last couple of weeks when Demar Derozan from the Raptors came forward, took the courage, and actually talked about his depression. And all of a sudden, we've got other NBA superstars. They're now, because he was vulnerable.
Yes.
Other people are actually now coming forward. It's powerful.
Yes,
it's very, especially for men. I mean, women, I think we have it's a little bit easier for us, but when we can actually see men kind of stepping forward, I think it's just amazing. But it really is a sign of courage. We're stepping into something that's unknown.
Right.
We don't know how people are going to respond.
And you're showing your real self.
And
that's very scary.
Yes.
So it's also a sign of trust, you say. It's a sign of closeness and intimacy, and a sign of imperfection and humility.
Yeah, and I think
people have a hard time with that.
Well, and I think it's when we're sharing something about ourselves that's imperfect, all of a sudden we realize, oh, I'm not perfect, and is someone still going to like me if I'm actually not perfect?
Yeah.
I think when we can actually kind of hold everything up. I think about the very first time Oprah was ever on her show, she did this. I think one of the reasons why she was so successful is because the very first show she did, she laid it all out, saying, okay, here's my background, I'm going to be totally out there and see how people respond. And honestly, Tracy, I think that's one of the reasons you've been so successful in this show is because you don't play the cards around I'm perfect.
Right.
Right? Like,
and that was a lesson that I had to learn too. So I used to play that game. That is a lonely game of trying to pretend you know it all and you've got it all and the life is good. It's not perfect.
It's not perfect.
And it's very liberating actually to be real. And I find in those real moments on this show, we get way more of a connection, and I get way more of a connection with our viewers. So I was saying to our producer before the show, there's two things that I absolutely love that has changed with society that has benefited me.
Yeah.
One is that my arms are in style. When I was in grade, you like this now.
Strong.
Thank you, Michelle Obama. Thank you, Angela Bassett. In grade 6, this wasn't cool.
Right.
Okay. The second thing is that vulnerability is now being seen as a superpower and not a weakness.
Yes.
That's who I am.
Right.
That's how I lead.
Yeah.
And now you can be a leader and be vulnerable, and it's okay. So I'm not weak for saying I don't know something and I need smarter people around me that can fill in the gaps. I'm smart for doing that.
Absolutely.
That's what's new, and it's liberating, and it's good. And I think that you can lead by example by admitting when you're wrong, by saying I don't know something, and by saying I need your help. That is I think a huge sign of leadership.
Sister. You do not meet me at this table. No, I love it. No, I love it. But I honestly think that is one of the reasons you've been so successful.
Thank you. Thank you for saying
honestly,
that.
Because it really is. There's power to it.
There really is.
There really is power to it.
I want to throw it now to director Ava Duvernay. So she has worked with A-list celebrities like Oprah, Reese Witherspoon, and Mindy Kaling. Our entertainment reporter Terry Hart recently sat down with Ava and asked her about the power of vulnerability.
And that's what vulnerability is. You open yourself up for criticism, for challenges, but you do it because it's the only way to move forward, truly, or else you stay static. And there's something about being safe and static that I think is just not the way that I want to live. I'm going to take risks and move forward.
Love that answer so much, because the idea of being big and bold and confident, and I think it's fair to admit sometimes we're scared.
Yeah, it opens you up to beautiful things if you just free yourself of all of the things that people say it needs to be, say that you need to be. That's what vulnerability is. It's an openness, and I think vulnerability has the word of has a negative connotation, but it's really quite beautiful.
I love her. I love her. She's doing amazing. Let's talk about some concrete tips so people can take action and be a little bit more vulnerable in their life.
Some people might be too vulnerable. Right? There is a sign in terms of you can be actually too vulnerable. So I think there is an art in terms of, you know, when and where and how we are actually vulnerable. But for those of us who vulnerability does not come easy, okay, here's a couple of things. Number one, think of somebody in your life. It could be a spouse. It could be children, it could be a friend that you would actually like to become more vulnerable. You want to have a deeper relationship, okay? So kind of like choose one person. Everybody think of one person you want to have a better relationship with them, and then think of what's one thing you could actually share with them that you have not yet shared. Okay, and that's kind of like almost the simplest way to actually think about it. And when I think about vulnerability, like I'm a big journal writer. I've been writing journals since I was 15. First thing I do when I'm 6 o'clock in the morning with my cup of coffee, and I'm journaling. I'm doing, you know, so that's my thing. And I often think to myself, who in my life actually would have access to these journals?
Right.
Who in my life would kind of know with what's actually in it? And the highs and the lows.
Yes.
That's kind of the vulnerability. That's kind of like the innermost part of it. So I want you to kind of think of one person, share a little bit.
Yes.
Okay, then see how they respond.
Yeah.
Because you don't necessarily want to be vulnerable with everybody.
That's true.
Right, you do have to kind of make sure that you are making sure that you're planting you're basically doing a good job in terms of the trust issue. I think it's a really, really important thing around trusting. So that's
you don't
one
want
thing.
people abusing your vulnerability either.
And then the second thing is, and this is kind of interesting, is not be afraid to admit your mistakes.
That's really hard.
That's right, because again, it's a sense around I'm going to take off this mask and say, you know what, I screwed up here. I screwed up. I could have done this actually better. And when we do that, all of a sudden people will trust us more.
Right.
And so it kind of does this amazing circle, right? When we actually share and we can actually trust, then people actually can then trust us back. And I think that's why it kind of goes in this very powerful circle around meaningful relationship and connection.
When you admit that you screwed up, people can trust your judgment.
Yes.
Because they know that you are being honest.
Right.
And I think that's why it gives you more credibility.
Yeah.
It doesn't make you weaker. People actually say, okay, I trust the judgment. And know when you do well and know when you can do better.
Yes.
And that's okay.
And then own it.
And own it.
And own it. And move forward.
In either situation.
Yes. And do it as fast as you can.
Yeah. But we all know that grown-up in our life that has yet to say, I'm sorry, or I made a mistake.
Yes.
So make a step towards admitting.
Yes.
No one expects everyone to be perfect. No one is.
Yes.
You know,
and you can do it verbally, but you can also do it in email. You can also do it in text.
That's
Start
true.
baby steps.
Yes.
You know, if there's something that you need to kind of own something, start the process.
Right.
Just start it, and you'll actually feel a sense of more courage.
Yeah.
And it's risk, it's scary, but it's powerful.
Yeah, especially when you see how
powerful.
people respond to it. I think that you'll get a little bit addicted to vulnerability.
Yes.